Kilimanjaro. The name in Swahili means shining mountain. At almost 20,000 feet, it rises above the clouds. Kilimanjaro is the highest freestanding mountain and one of the tallest volcanoes in the world. It supports a surprising variety of environments, from lush tropical rainforests to frigid polar-like glaciers. But in recent years, the glaciers which surround the summit have been shrinking. In the last century, 80% of them have disappeared. And what if a catastrophic event should occur, just like the landslide at in 1980? This international expedition will risk the hazards of high-altitude mountaineering, searching for answers to new scientific questions. Now there is a critical question about this mountain that symbolizes Africa. Is Kilimanjaro dying? Join the expedition in Volcano Above the Clouds. Up next on Nova. Mountain in Africa, Kilimanjaro. 40 miles wide, covering an area 50 times the size of Manhattan, its massive flanks create their own microclimate. The water which flows off Kilimanjaro is vital to the mountain's varied plant life. And the isolation of its forests has allowed for many species to evolve. It's a paradise, especially for those who want to study its unusual environments.
This is magical. I'm going to try and climb Kilimanjaro, which will be very difficult for me, but I think it's well worth doing if we can answer some of these questions about its health.
Best of his abilities, but he feels an urgency to do it now. When the first European travelers came to this part of East Africa, they were astonished to discover that high above the plains rose a mountain. So astonished that at first they were unsure whether the snow on its top was really cloud cover. Kilimanjaro is so big that it creates its own weather system. And the clouds, which often cover the mountain, provide rainfall for the many Tanzanians who live nearby. And may be dying, putting their livelihoods at risk. The climb is a hard one. Only a third of those who set off for the summit ever manage to reach it. The route will take them past the villages around the mountain, up through the forest, and then over the volcanic plateau until they reach the steep cone at the center.
To think, how could I get there with the difficult weather? Also, I would like to touch that snow and to get close to it. In a tropical area, it's amazing things to have snow on the mountain.
It's the water flowing off Kilimanjaro that is so vital to the health of the mountain and to the Tanzanians who live around it. The question Robin and Michael need to answer is whether the shrinking glaciers will also dry up Kilimanjaro's vital water supply.
Which part of the mountain, from the top?
The answer is not a simple one. While the melting glaciers supply some of the water, there is also rainfall generated in the extensive forests on the slopes of Kilimanjaro.
And as we go further up, we find real cloud forest. And in the cloud forest, where it doesn't necessarily rain, but the clouds form in among the trees and the water condenses on the trees.
The mountain has evolved numerous ways to trap the water. As Robin and Michael walk up, seemingly every surface has mosses, ferns, and other plants growing so that moisture can be retained. The whole cloud forest acts as a gigantic sponge, making it a naturalist's paradise.
This is magical. It's a very long walk, but I think we must try to do it.
Hard work for him. By the way, I think he could manage to do it, no matter it's hard or whatever.
As Robin and Michael get higher and higher up in the cloud forest, they begin to see some of the plants that have made Kilimanjaro so famous. Because the mountain is so isolated, it has evolved many of its own species. Indeed, it's said that there are more species unique to Kilimanjaro than there are to some entire countries. Kilimanjaro is sometimes described as an island in the sky because it has evolved its own unique ecosystem, which may now be at risk. For Robin and Michael to move further up the mountain, they will need the support of a full expedition with porters and all the...
Being cleared the whole time to make way for farming. It's been interesting to see the state of the forest. Tanzania, of course, needs the timber. It's an economic resource. It's a very important resource. But from the point of view of the Kilimanjaro ecosystems, it breaks up the natural forest in a way which makes it very difficult for animals to move between bits of the forest. Having said that, we've just seen colobus monkeys in the pine trees, which is very interesting. In some ways that's encouraging, but I think the fact that one species is prepared to use the pines doesn't necessarily mean that everything in the garden's rosy.
After 2 days of climbing, the team is above the trees and are now at the same elevation as the clouds. They've reached but 3. 800,000 years ago, a series of eruptions resulted in the first of these, Mount Shira, rising up from the East African plain. Then another giant volcano formed to the east, Mawenzi. Finally, only 300,000 years ago, a volcano called Kibo erupted between these two peaks, climbing on the shoulders of the 2 existing giants to become one of the tallest volcanoes in the world. However, the craters have since eroded, especially that of Shira, the oldest, which the team is now crossing.
Oh, that's a nice piece.
Volker and Kevin are trying to...
The magma.
Until recently, scientists assumed that the roof of the craters had simply caved in.
Since St. Helens, there's a new model, we get St. Helens.
Volker is concerned that Kilimanjaro may do what St. Helens did in 1980, not erupt, but suffer a landslide, ripping open the side of the mountain and releasing a pyroclastic flow that devastated a huge area around it. The forests for 7 miles around St. Helens were completely wiped out. Looking at Kibo, the main summit of Kilimanjaro, Volker and Kevin can see that the rim had collapsed at one point in time from just such a landslide. Could a more serious one happen? And would it release the magma from deep below the surface?
I'm sure this crater has a long history. It probably was much deeper than it is today, and then it was filled.
It lives, there's lying up here and this crater.
Mm-hmm. That's just gorgeous. The sun sliding down the southern slope of Meru and orange glow spreading under the clouds to the north of there.
The team has a problem. They are trying to get up to the western breach, the dip in the side of the mountain caused by a landslide.
And that scree slope quite easily. And with the...
Robin and Michael find themselves descending into a sheltered dip beside the mountain. Here there is a valley full of giant senecio, a plant that usually grows to only a few feet, but here towers above them. It's a magical place. Kilimanjaro is known for its giant plant life. In the morning, when the skies clear, this enormous valley is revealed. It is called Barranco, and it is where the greatest concentration of Kilimanjaro's most unusual plants can be found.
Well, Michael, we talked about looking forward to finding the senecio, and here we are. It's like old leather, isn't it? These leaves.
Mountain environment. These lobelia have evolved a unique survival strategy. They store a type of sugar, which prevents the plant from freezing each night and losing moisture during the warmer days.
This is a common plant in altitude like this, and it's grow only in this altitude, 3,000.
I think the Barranco here, while it's stark and it's got all this rock around it, interest in why plants like these giant senecios, these giant ground sauce, the giant lobelias, why they're giant, why other things are so silvery, all the plants around, and you can see in the background, why they've come to reflect the light, the extremes of cold and heat and light, and how those plants and animals really cope with the difficulties that it presents. And perhaps it's a bit of a privilege to have been able to come here to...
Meanwhile, the team is still concerned that there might be too much snow on the mountain.
We're about 40 people, and it looks like there's been quite a lot of snow melt in the last few days, and with that amount of people, it's got to be safe. How far do you want to go up there today?
Kilimanjaro's notoriously turbulent weather system can close in on a climbing expedition with frightening speed. Kevin's principal worry is whether Robin will be able to make it.
That'll make it quite awkward for him, and more importantly, if he were to not succeed, to come down off the western breach with snow is quite tricky. The second reason is he's been quite under the weather.
Party returns. They report the route to the summit is just passable, although very difficult because of the heavy snow.
Well, we've come a long way in 7 days on the mountain, between 13,000 and 14,000 feet. One of the things in my mind is, of course, that mountains do claim lives, and Kilimanjaro is no exception there. But I think it's the right one for everybody here. The team can move much less encumbered. They can get to their objectives, they can get the questions they need to answer answered, the things they need to look at, particularly the glaciers and the top of the volcano looked at.
Robin's decision that he have to go down, I support him.
It's known as Lava Tower. They are now approaching the snow line. They find some meltwater here, but clearly not enough to sustain the forests below. At this altitude, just below the western breach, little plant life survives, and the cold is just as hostile. recently fallen snow and release rockfalls.
The quicker we get out of here, the better.
Huh?
The quicker we move on from here, the better.
Really? You're not happy with it?
The best place to stop is like, you see this cliff on our left, some location like that, or even where this lot are, but in the rocks. So anything that comes down from the cliffs above, bounce over.
After an exhausting 12-hour climb, they finally emerge on the plateau just below the summit. This is where the great glaciers surround the volcanic crater of Kilimanjaro.
Unbelievable. Here I am, top of this big volcano, the summit rim. I felt invigorated. I certainly would like to be down there and look into the crater.
We'll go down there and have a look. Is it what you expected, Volker?
It's even more. I mean, I've seen photographs of this, but to stand here and look at it, that's something different. It's more exciting.
Absolutely. Can you smell the sulfur?
Oh yes.
I've just had a strong whiff of it.
It's really exciting.
Absolutely.
There's such steep walls. That's a collapse crater.
About 100 years ago, there was rumour that local people around here saw emissions coming out of here, but it's not actually been documented. I mean, this could be relatively recent.
Oh yes, the rim deposits, the grey rim, which is nicely to be seen, looks very, very young.
Because it's so uniform as well.
Yeah. But of course, I do not know.
All the indicators show that the volcano may have erupted within the last several hundred years, meaning it can still be regarded as potentially active. To determine just how active Kilimanjaro might become, they need to descend into the bowl at its center. Here, in the oxygen-starved atmosphere, the heat of the crater floor and severe cold make it seem as if they are walking on the moon. Volker and Kevin are looking for fumaroles, the vents from which volcanic gases escape into the atmosphere.
This section seems very active.
I think let's have a try over here.
This is very fresh. This is warm as well, very hot here.
Is it?
Hold on, this is an active one.
Oh,
Ow!
the soil
Ow.
is hot.
Let's take a reading, I think.
Oh, no.
The fact that there are such high temperatures and sulfur deposits on the inner ring of the crater indicates that there is active magma close to the surface. Volker estimates just 400 feet below. Just like the side of the mountain, the crater walls here are very steep and potentially unstable, making a landslide a serious possibility. It could also expose the molten rock at the center of the volcano.
like the one I saw in the pictures, in a flat surface. But the one I see now, it's totally different. And it's really, really amazing because it's something like a tower, a big tower of the glaciers.
It's the rising warm air given off by the volcano that sculpts the glaciers into such fanciful shapes. And it's atmospheric radiation that causes most of the water from the glaciers to evaporate. As Michael studies the glaciers, it's clear that they are not a major source of water for the mountain. The glaciers of Kilimanjaro are shrinking. Recent research has shown this is likely due to global warming and other causes. The glaciers have been consistently retreating since the German explorer Hans Meyer first climbed the mountain in 1889. It wasn't until 1912 that the first real survey was done of the ice cap. According to the latest research, since that time, about 80% of the ice field has vanished. And the heat from the volcano below is another factor. But whatever the cause of the melting, it is estimated that by 2015, the glaciers will all be gone.
If glaciers disappear on Kilimanjaro, I feel so sad because if glaciers disappear,
early the next morning, the team sets off to reach the actual summit, still almost 1,000 feet above the crater plateau. This will be their last climb.
Yeah, because it keeps me in a rhythm when I'm walking. Now I'm walking, I have to follow this pace, so it helps me very much.
After Tanzania achieved its independence in 1961, it was renamed Uhuru Peak as a symbol of African liberation. The word Uhuru in Swahili means simply freedom.
Woo! I made it. I can't believe it. Whoa, top of the world. Ah, the highest point in Africa. This is the point of my dream. Oh, man. Wow, look at that. A massive view. The glaciers. Ooh.
It's hard to believe.
I can see the Heim Glacier and I can see the crater.
How do you feel?
I feel okay.
Maybe we can fly up and see the mountain together later. Because I think that's the only way I'm going to see it now.
Okay.
I regret quite a lot not going to the top. It was slippery and icy, and I think from the point of view of everything we've been trying to do, definitely the right decision that I should have walked around.
For the team, 6 days of strenuous walking had put them into position on the barren plateau just below the summit, 3,000 feet. Overall, the expedition had met its goal. The team had reached the top of the mountain. They now know that these glaciers, formed more than 11,000 years ago, are sensitive indicators of climate change. But Robin also believes that it's likely the plant life on and around Kilimanjaro will continue to thrive. Whether the shrinking is due to the end of an ice age, the heat of the volcano, or to global warming, Robin and Michael may be among the last to see the beauty of the glaciers on this majestic mountain.